All right, let's talk about some strategies for lighting iteration. So first of all, we've got our scene here, and you'll notice that I've actually pruned some of the lights here so that we don't see them in our viewer. We're only going to look at the original lights that we started with. So we've got our dome light, which you can see in our background here, and our two portal lights in the windows. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and start an interactive render. So I'd like to work on this shot for now. This is shot 1020. Let's go ahead and set our graph state variable to 1020. If we look through our camera real quick, you can see there's our view. What we're going to do here is interactive render. But before we do that, we got to make sure that we set our lights to be interactive. All right, so let's go ahead and right click here and do a live render. Now Katana gives you some really awesome tools for interactively lighting in the viewport. And so I'm going to show you some of those. You see this button up here, this is the lighting mode. So this is a toggle, turn that on and you're going to get some extra controls on the left here for intensity, exposure, and color. And you can add to this list if you need to, as well as mute and solo for your lights. Now when you're working out of here, you want to make sure you're in the correct gaffer. You also want to go up here and click on this little down arrow and choose some different options. You can create lights interactively in the viewport with these different tools. So if you want a specular angle, for instance, you could choose that. And then from this list, you're going to want to make sure that you choose the light that you want to create. In this case, an Arnold quad light is what I'd like. Notice that you cannot click on anything and select it. And that's because this interactive lighting view, this light mode, does not let you select any objects. Say I wanted a light to actually give me this highlight. This is the default lighting in the viewer. So it just shift and left click, and it's going to create a little area light there. So first of all, let's go ahead and scale it up, and we'll move it back a little bit. And then I'm going to go to the material and let's choose light 02. And it looks like our interactive render stopped. So we're going to have to actually get that going again. Okay, so we have our interactive render going down here. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and mute our sky dome. This is a pretty common scenario. You put a light in there and you expect to see light, but right now it's totally black. Now the reason for that is that we need to increase the intensity. So you can either do that in the gaffer panel directly, or you can do it in your viewport. For now, I'm going to put a value of 10,000. And that's a pretty high number. And so, this is one of the ways that you can work. You can move things around in your viewer. For a second, I'm going to turn off our interactive mode here. And let's actually go to a perspective view. So we can see where our light actually is. It's very close to the character. Right, so you can move this back. You could change the color, etc., etc. You get the idea. There's actually a more interactive way that we could do this. So first of all, I'm going to cancel the interactive live view render here. So let's just hit escape. Let's go ahead and demonstrate using the render delegate in the viewer. So now that we've paused this render, let's go up to display and choose Arnold under render delegates. And now as soon as you do that, you can see a little bit of action going on here, right? So if you go under display, you'll see that I've already turned off basic materials, because when you turn this on, it's generally going to be gray like this. But what you want to do here is turn off default lighting. And right away, you'll see that we have our light here. We'll turn off our basic materials as well. So you might be asking, why is this light such a high intensity value? Part of the reason is, if you go under the advanced tab, parameter called normalize. Normalize is a parameter that lets you change the size of your light and thereby change the size of your shadows without changing the intensity. And so this is a good way to actually illustrate it, is in this viewer. So if we increase the size, you can see that you catch some glimpses of my shadows here as I interact here. Part of the reason this is acting up is not because of Katana. It's probably because I'm recording this course at the same time. So I apologize for that. I probably need a better graphics card. But you kind of can see what's going on here, right? You can catch some glimpses of the shadows. So you see you've got a nice soft shadow there. Now if I make this really small, try and catch a shadow here, now you've got a much harder shadow. So again, the size of your light determines how soft your shadow is. And so normalize is a nice feature for artists because it lets you iterate on the shadow without changing the intensity of the light. So let's turn off normalize for a second and see what happens. Now immediately you'll see this is extremely bright. So we've got to put this back down. So like 10 or 20. Oh, let's leave it at 10. So now as we scale this light up, you'll see that it gets brighter. This is more of a physical based property. And actually, if you were to make a plane and put it in exactly the same spot as this area light and put an emissive material on your plane with a white material and say, change the intensity of your emission to this number, you would get a render that looked almost exactly the same as this. It would be a lot noisier because it's all indirect rays, but that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on here. Right? So that's your choice. Whether you want to use normalize or not is completely up to you. Okay, I've gone ahead and turned off the render delegate for now, since my machine seemed to be bogging down with it. Again, that is not an issue with Katana. I'm sure it's just an issue with my graphics card. I apologize for any kind of glitches in the audio for that last little section. So anyway, what I'm going to do is get the interactive render going again. So let's do a live render here. So I'll show you another way that we can actually iterate quickly on our lighting direction. This is a very old method of doing light directions. Just look through the light. So here you can see once you're looking through a light, as you move around, you just use your viewport navigation. And doing that, you're going to see live updates in your live render view. So that's also one of the options that you have. Let's back it up here a little bit. Maybe get it a little closer. Keep it more off to the side. You get the idea? Now I want to show you something when I'm doing that. So let's go to the object tab here of the light. Notice down here, here's our translate and rotate. So as we're rotating and moving our light around, you can see that we're iterating on a whole bunch of different parameters at the same time. Potentially 5 or 6 of these things are changing every time I move this around. So I can show you another way that you can set up your lights that lets you iterate on just one of these parameters at a time. First of all, let's talk about the catalog. So we've got a lot of things up here that are being displayed in this list. So if you right click up here, you can actually turn some of these off because a lot of this is details that you're not really interested in most of the time. Let's turn off. I'll just keep most of this off. However, we want to leave this one, comments. So comment are extremely useful. You can put any kind of comment in here and say, you know what? My awesome light direction. I use comments all the time because it lets me at least keep a record of what I was doing. You know, when you're working and iterating, you're generally going in one direction. You're moving forward. As you're sitting at your desk moving forward and figuring out your lights, that's awesome if you're the only person that's involved in this whole process. But oftentimes what you're doing is you're working on trying to address notes that you've been given. Maybe your director likes this light, but he wants you to go 20 degrees around to the front. And if you want to do that, you can, of course, estimate about 20 degrees, and then you got to move the light back to point out what you were looking at before. And because this is a live render, you've now lost the record up here of what that looked like. Right? You can, of course, undo it. Now, there's ways that you can also right-click and duplicate a catalog item, so you can keep that item up here. And if you were writing useful information into the comments, then maybe you can go back to that. Like say you've got something that looked really good. Well, what I would recommend is, of course, save your file at that point and then version up. But the thing is, oftentimes you're not doing that. You're just interactively working, right? And so you got something that looks awesome and then you lost it. So it's useful oftentimes to keep comments and work in a methodical way that lets you get back to the light that you liked. And so I'll show you one method that I like to use a lot, and you can see some of it over here. I set up my own target light, and it lets you do panning and tilting. So first of all, let's go ahead and go back to a perspective view here. We still have our interactive render here going, so I'm actually going to escape for a second. So let's go ahead back to our gaffer panel here, and if you right click and add, I want to add a rig. There's also an R hotkey. Let's call this something. This is going to be our light target. Now I'm going to hit R again to make another one, but I'm making it as a child of this first one. Now I would usually call this one tilt. And then this is where I would actually make my light. So let's go ahead and make an Arnold quad light underneath this level. If we go back to the target for a second and you on the object tab, you're going to see we're looking at our translations and rotations. Here's how this works. I use this as a target, so I'm going to translate this target where I want to. So let's say I want to put it on our character's head, like so, just roughly in the right place here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm relying on this to be the point that our light is looking at. And then we're going to also use this as the panning rotation. So only rotate on the y-axis. And then underneath that, we have this tilt locator. And this tilt, I'm only going to iterate on the X rotation. I'm not going to touch the translation at all. And I'm not going to touch the scale at all. Oh yeah, don't touch the scale on this either. So again, as a reminder, translate X, Y, and Z, and then rotate on Y. And then for this level, we're going to only rotate on X. And then when we get to our light, we can scale this up, 25 or so. We're not going to rotate on X or Y, but potentially we might rotate on Z. And this isn't a hard and fast rule. You can rotate these, but you'll see what I'm getting at in a minute. Translate X and Y, I'm going to leave those at 0 as well. I am going to translate this on Z. So let's go back about 100 units. So here was our target, and now our light is 100 units away from it. And so as I move my light around, as I move the target around, my light moves with it. Right? So let's put it back. And now I'm on my target. Let's try rotating 30 degrees. There we go. So notice that I have just replaced 6 different parameter iterations with 1. So now I can pan around using this, right? So 45 degrees. And if I want to tilt, I can go to X minus 45 degrees. And then if I want to get my light to be closer, I can just translate it on Z. So this is really, really cool because now as I'm lighting and changing these individual parameters, I can record what I'm doing over here. And so say I am doing live render or even preview renders. Each time I run a render, I can go ahead and record the one parameter that I was iterating on instead of having to write down 6 of them. Now let's go over to the material tab and put in some light AOVs. So I have light number 2 for this light. And for this one, let's do light 03. Now, the reason I like to do this is not just because it's handy once you get to compositing, but also because we can use this as a quick way to avoid having to work on solos and mutes. So you can actually easily check both lights from one render. So let's go ahead and do a live render again. So as you'll see here, now that it's rendering, let's choose, there's light 02, and here's light 03. And of course, we've got to set this to a normal set of values. If I want to see what each light is doing, I just toggle between the different LPEs, which I find to be a little bit better than muting and soloing all the time. But either way totally works. And now while you're working on lighting in Katana, I'm going to demonstrate this in a later chapter, but I want to talk about the things that I'm looking for when I'm actually lighting. I'm looking for light direction, I'm looking for shadow quality, and light quality. How does that light wrap around a character? Where are the shadows being cast? The things that I'm less concerned about are the color of the light and the intensity of the light. And as I'll show you later, the reason that I'm less concerned about those things is that I'm going to iterate on those later in comp, where it's much more interactive in real time. And also setting it up this way will give me more flexibility when I get notes from the director. So when you're iterating on lights, it's useful obviously to be able to look at each light individually. My first boss ever, this was his first tip to me, was work on one light at a time. It is useful to see the results of all of them together, but again, you're going to be mixing the light intensities and colors later. It is useful sometimes to get in the ballpark. You know, obviously you need to be able to see the light to be able to judge it, but you know, as far as the color, sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a temporary color, and then later on, once I get down the line, maybe I'll at that point switch it back to white before I do my final renders. So that's the individual light. That's the two lights mixing together. And so having that flexibility of LPEs in the viewport is extremely powerful.